everyone. Welcome to today's edition of BookTrib Live. It's a big day today because this chat is actually brought to you by NetGalley, BookTrib, and Merrill Moss Media, and we're really excited about these interviews. So stay tuned for more. Today we're chatting with the multi-talented Catherine McKenzie. Thank you so much for joining us today, Catherine.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Catherine graduated from McGill University with degrees in history and law. She currently practices law in Montreal, where she was born and raised. Catherine's novels include Spin, Arranged, Forgotten, and Hidden, which are all international bestsellers and have been translated into numerous languages. She recently released a novella as well called Spun, which is the sequel to her first novel, Spin. Catherine's fifth novel, Smoke, was published by Lake Union yesterday on October 20th. So we're congratulating her today on that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So to start off, will you maybe tell us a little bit about your new book, Smoke?
Sure. So Smoke is about a small town that's being threatened by a wildfire. It's a small town, a fictional town set in the Rockies. And the main character is an arson investigator, and she's trying to figure out what started the fire. At the same time, her personal life is totally falling apart.
Sounds exciting. So, according to NBC, 2015 has been one of the most destructive years on record for wildfires in the U.S., which I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Over 9 million acres have been burned this year so far. Did this influence your decision to write Smoke at all, and how did this help inform your book?
Well, no, I mean, it's honestly just a coincidence,
Oh, really?
not a good one, obviously. When you write a book, you know, it takes years when you start writing a book to when it gets published. So I first started writing this book 3 years ago because a small town in the Rockies that I've spent a lot of time in was being threatened by a wildfire. And it's what gave me the idea. And then I put it on the shelf for a while, and then I started writing this book really last year again, and I finished in January. So I had no idea that it was going to be a terrible fire season when it came out. So I guess it makes it timely. I wish it wasn't in a lot of ways, because it's terrible what happens to people in these circumstances.
Definitely a coincidence. Really interesting how that worked out.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it happens. So how is Smoke different from your previous novels, and how is it similar?
I think it's different in the fact that it takes place over 6 days. So that's a really compressed time frame. And then also it takes place in a small town. All of my previous novels have taken place in big cities, or I guess my last novel, Hidden, took place in a smaller city. But so I really wanted to explore also what it's like to be in a small town, and how that's different. You know, people know who you are, or they think they know who you are, and it's different than how you can be anonymous in a city.
So we have our first visitor question from Nicole. She wants to know,
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. Do you have a favorite part of the writing process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always fun at the beginning of a book when the idea is really, you're sort of alive with the idea, and you're forming your characters, and you're deciding, you know, the big plot points and stuff. And so I usually find the first like 20 or 30,000 words of the book, the first third, super fun. And then it's also fun at the end when you're wrapping everything up and you're sort of racing towards the finish. It can be nerve-wracking too, because like hopefully you pulled off what you were trying to do. But I think that those are my favorite parts of it. Yeah.
Do you have a least favorite part?
The middle of the book. Somewhere between 30,000 words and 60,000 words is, you know, it can be hard sometimes. It feels insurmountable. And I think every time you write a book, you feel like, oh my God, I don't know how to write a book. And why did I think I knew how to write a book? And what am I doing? And how am I ever going to write that many words? And then that feeling goes away around 60 or 70,000 words. So that's probably the hardest part, my least favorite part. Though actually with Smoke, sorry to skip the answer, but just with Smoke, because it's divided in 6 days, I was able to kind of avoid that feeling because I would write a day at a time. So I wouldn't pay attention to the total words. So I didn't feel like that when I wrote Smoke. So that was good.
Oh, that's a good thing. So Of all the books you've written, do you have a favorite or one that hits a little closer to home than the others? I know it's a hard question to
I can't pick a favorite. That's like picking a favorite among your kids. I wouldn't say any of them hit closer to home than others, but I think each one is a reflection, or my feelings about each book is a reflection of where I was in my life when I wrote it. So there are some books that for me were tougher to write, and it's not necessarily because of the subject matter, but it was just, what was going on in my own life when I was writing the books. And I hope that I've evolved as a writer since my first novel that I wrote almost 10 years ago. There are people who my first novel is their favorite, and there are people who are my last novel their favorite. So I'm just trying to do my best.
Yeah. So we have another visitor question from Connor. He says, what's your favorite genre to read and why?
I read pretty eclectically, actually. I grew up reading a lot of detective fiction, so I read all the classics like Agatha Christie and Nero Wolfe, and I read P.D. James. So I wouldn't actually say I have a favorite genre, honestly. I know that sounds weird. I think my favorite genre is really just good, because I think if any genre, so like normally I wouldn't read fantasy or, like apocalyptic books, but The Hunger Games are fantastically written books, and so I really enjoyed reading them. Or The Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. I wouldn't necessarily read other books in those genres, but they're great, so I read them. But probably what I read the most of is commercial fiction, so similar to what I write.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a background in law and you work as an attorney. Have you ever used any of that knowledge in your writing? And have you ever thought about possibly writing a legal thriller?
Um, on the last part, no. I don't, I do, that's what I do for most of my day, and writing is an escape for me, so I try not to do that. Right. But yes, I definitely use some things. So in The Forgotten, which is my third novel, the main character is a lawyer. And it's actually a little tricky though, when you know too much about a topic, how to write it so that it's not super boring for other people, because you get into the details and it's like, oh, well, that's not how it would have really happened in real life. Like, who cares? Books are not about real life. They're about the interesting parts of life. So, and I do have a book. I have had many lawyers as characters in my books, but like a pure legal thriller like John Grisham, I just don't think that that's my forte as a writer. So to date, but never say never. 10 years ago, if you told me I would have written and published one book, I would have been completely shocked. So.
Oh. Well, kind of going off of that, so what made you decide to start writing and to publish your first book? Did you just have an epiphany one day, or have you always loved to write?
I always wrote poems mostly. But I never thought I could write a novel. I didn't think I had any imagination. I didn't think I had the patience. Occasionally I would read a book that I loved and I'd be like, oh, I have to write a book just like this. And I did that after Foucault's Pendulum, for instance. And I sat down and I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm just trying to rewrite Foucault's Pendulum. But yeah, about 10 years ago, I just had this idea that kind of wouldn't leave me alone. And I didn't know what it was. At first I was thinking maybe it was a film. And then I just started writing. Because I just had to. I don't know how to explain it, but there was something up in my head all the time and I just needed to get it out. And then I started writing it and I was like, well, maybe this could be a book. I had like 20,000 words and let's see. So I tried and I finished it, and I thought briefly about trying to get it published, but for me, it was really a practice novel, and it was a little too autobiographical. And I had an idea for Arranged. I had the idea for Arranged at that time, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put this other book in a drawer and start over and write like something that's purely fiction and see how that goes. So I did that, and when that was done, I thought I had something. I thought I had, achieved something, and so I decided to try and find an agent. And I would love to say the rest is history. But the rest is history. 4 years later, my book was published in Canada. So it took a long time.
Right. Oh, interesting. Well, this is a viewer question that actually kind of goes with with the previous question. The question's from Amanda, and she wants to know what your writing process is like.
It depends what phase I'm in. I would say I start out with a thinking process. So I get ideas. I might get an idea for a book. And then I'll think about that idea and I'll think about, well, where does that go? What story would that idea allow me to tell? And who would be the characters in that? And if an idea stays with me and I start seeing characters and I start getting little bits of dialogue or seeing scenes in my head or the end of the book, then I'll start like keeping a file where I put that stuff. And then when I like to start books at the beginning of the year, maybe it sounds a little silly, but so I like to sit down like in January and start writing. And I used to write a lot more at night during the week, but I'm a little older now and I get tired. So I tend to write on the weekends and on vacation. Airplane's a great place for writing because there's no internet. So I try to write, 1,000 words a writing session. And I'll set myself like monthly goals. Usually the beginning of the book is slower because I'm working out who the characters are and stuff like that. And then I'll break down, once I've got the first sort of 50 pages, I'll break down the rest of the book and I'll have monthly goals. That's how I've done the last couple of books that I've been writing. But each book has been different, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a very organized process. Like you have it all kind of laid out.
I'm a lawyer. It sounds a lot more organized than, because I don't write outlines. So, there's that like pantser plotter thing. So I don't tend to write an outline out. I like to sort of see how it's all going to fold out when I write it. So, or unfold, fold out. I don't even know.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, how do you write a character that's interesting, likable, and unique, and just have all of these qualities in one? Like, do you have a formula for that, or like you said, you just go?
I think that people can't be perfect, right? Nobody's perfect, so perfect characters are annoying and not believable. I think you need characters the characters have to have something that draws you in about them, even if they're going to be tough or hard. There has to be some reason why you want to know what happens to them. So that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be likable, but they have to be charismatic. So if you think about Breaking Bad, for instance, the main character is like a horrible person, right? But he's super charismatic. So you want to know what happens to him. Same thing in Mad Men, for instance. Again, terrible man, but charismatic, and so you want to follow him. So, and I think it's a question of thinking about the characters. You have to think about who they are and what their backstory is and what trouble they've had in their life, and then try and think about how they would react in a given situation that you put them in. And I find, for me anyway, that once I've thought enough about my characters, it just instinctively they react the way they should or the way they would. I sometimes get taken by surprise. Again, it all sounds crazy. Writing sounds like craziness. Things in your head, you're taken by surprise. There are characters to show up sometimes. You're like, oh, who are you? Okay, I'm going to go with that. So it's probably why writers drink a lot. But I'm not saying I drink a lot. That's Anyway, so yeah, I think that's how you do that. But it's hard to break it down into a formula. There are books that definitely give suggestions about how to do that if people are struggling with it. But that's my process.
So a few years ago, you wrote a blog post for Huffington Post, which you contribute to regularly. It was called the Top 5 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Published My First Book. So what's your number one thing that you wish you knew before you first published your book?
What did I write on the list? I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember what I wrote there.
It doesn't have to be from the list, but just one that you.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to remember. What would be the thing I would want to know? You know what? I think I did not think about all the marketing and business side of writing at all. And part of that is good, I think, because I think when you're writing your novel, particularly your first novel, you shouldn't be thinking about that. You should just be thinking about writing the best thing that you can, and not about like what little niche in the market it might fit into or what's your marketing plan going to be or all that stuff. But it is a lot of work, and once your book is out there, there's just a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's fun. Like I love doing stuff like this and interacting with readers, but between like Facebook and Twitter and writing blog posts and all that stuff, it can be really hard to find the time to write. So I think it's knowing that what I wish I'd known to do is what I do now, which is I limit that in time every day. So I do my writing first, not right when a book comes out, but when I'm in a writing phase, I'll do my writing first and then do the promotion stuff second, because it's still more important that I write my next book than it is that I write a blog post or something like that.
Okay.
And that's probably not what I wrote in that article, but
well, I'm sure like your advice changes as you
yeah,
learn
absolutely
throughout the process. So this is sort of a similar question, but do you have any pointers? This is a question from Connor. Do you have pointers for young people who want to write or who want to be writers someday?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do is to read. I think if you don't love reading and you don't love books, I don't know why people want to write. Like sometimes people come up to me and they're talking, oh, I'm writing a book, and I'm like, okay, well, what do you like to read? And they're like, oh, I don't really read. I'm like, that's like saying I want to be a musician and I don't like music, So I think that's how you learn to write good books is like you can go to school and you can learn techniques, but reading helps put that into you in osmosis. And then I think the second point would be just do it. A lot of people talk about, oh, I'd like to write a book and I don't have time, and oh, I have an idea or maybe someday. But if you never start doing it, you're never going to do it, right? And so I think if you want to write a book, go ahead. And then my third point would be, but don't be afraid to fail. Like, not everybody has their first novel become some massive success. There's a lot of people who have novels in the drawer, sometimes a lot of novels in a drawer. So I think, if that's really what you want to do, you got to work at it just like anything else. It's a job. It's not like you don't sit around in like a smoking jacket and, in a romantic setting and be like, I have my quill pen. I shall now write the great American novel. It's not like that. It's just, it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of work.
Right. So. Definitely. That's great advice. So the covers to your books, they feature a variety of really interesting photos of women. And I've noticed that the women's faces are always somewhat hidden, which is really interesting. Do you have any input on your book covers, or talk about this a little and what the process is like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the headless woman, right? That's the So look, in women's fiction, there are ways that covers are expected to look, and I do get consulted about my covers, but I don't. I'm not a cover designer. I have, though, sometimes picked images that have ended up on the cover. But I think the idea behind having the sort of hidden face or from behind is that people like to imagine what the character is going to look like themselves. Whereas if you have a particular person right on the cover, then it shuts down the imagination a little bit. So I think that's what the idea is behind those kinds of covers. But definitely, women writers tend to have those kinds of covers. And if my name was McKenzie as a first name, Smith, and I was a man, there probably wouldn't be a woman on the cover of my book, even if the main character was a woman.
Right.
But that's life.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out with that.
Yeah. There was a funny blog post, I don't know if you saw it, that was like
I did see
taking books by men and giving them women's fiction covers.
Yeah.
And it's
I knew exactly
for anyone who
what you
hasn't
were
looked
talking
this
about.
up, look it up. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
That was really funny. I actually saw that earlier. Okay, so you're a very, very busy woman, as you were talking about before. You do all these things. So when you do have free time, what do you enjoy doing apart from writing?
Well, I read a lot and I watch a lot of TV. I'm a big consumer of television and pop culture. Sometimes I feel like I break Netflix. I don't know, when if you watch like 3 or 4 episodes in a row on Netflix, this little thing pops up and it's like, "Are you still watching?" I'm like, "Yes, stop judging me." But I think it's important. There's so much great TV these days, and there's great writing in television right now. And so, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, The Gilmore Girls, Felicity, The West Wing.
Mm-hmm.
What am I watching recently? The Good Wife, I think, is a fantastic show. So I definitely watch a lot of TV. I actually often write with the TV on. I know that sounds crazy, but I need to have background noise for me to sort of let go of my controlling lawyer brain and go into my creative place.
Mm-hmm.
So I always write with music or the television on. And I still read a lot. I think it's really important to do that, to know what's out there, and to be writing in a contemporary way, because I write contemporary fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to be reading all the time. So I probably read like 2 books a week.
Wow.
I ski, I run, I hang with my friends.
Yeah. So what are you reading right now? You said you read 2 books a week. That's a lot.
Yeah, I just finished The Magician's Lie by Greer McAllister, and I'm actually rereading the second Divergent, you
Okay.
know, that series. I'm reading, it's called Divergent, I think, right? That's what
Yeah, I
I'm,
think
yeah,
so.
that's what I'm reading right now.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Do you
I
ever?
like rereading books sometimes. When I'm not sure what I'm going to read next, I'll go reread something that I enjoyed,
Mm,
and it's sort of like a palate cleanser for me or
mm,
something.
I like doing that too, actually. So who who's your favorite author, if you had to pick? I know it's probably another really hard question, but
So hard, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love Jane Austen. I mean, I know it sounds cliche to say that, but I think she's fantastic.
Mhm.
More contemporary authors that have really inspired me. Nick Hornby, I love, everything by him. I really love John Green. I mean, I think
Yeah.
The Fault in Our Stars was just one of the best books that I've read in my life. It's just amazing. For all of those of you who have not read it, you really, really should. Um, and I loved Audrey Niffenegger's book. Oh my God, why am I blanking on the name? The Time Traveler's Wife.
Oh.
That
Mhm.
was a fantastic book.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's really hard for me to pick one.
Mhm.
I can't. And often I think it's like the book that I read and loved the most in the last year,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah.
Awesome. So there's a question here from Sandra. What's the last movie you saw in theaters, and was it any good?
Good question. Oh my God. What is the last movie I saw in theaters? Isn't that terrible? I know I've seen something in the last 6 months, but it must not have been that good because I can't remember what it was.
Or what
It's
about last
awful.
movie you saw in
The
general? If you
Yeah, the
can't think
last
of
movie
it.
I saw in general was, what did I watch recently? Actually watched the third Hunger Games movie the other
Mm.
night, and I enjoyed it. I think they were well done.
The ending's
Yeah.
really
I really
suspenseful.
want to see The Martian. Yeah.
Hmm.
I want to see The Martian. I read the book. If you guys haven't read that book, it's really fun, and it looks like they did a really good job with the movie.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to it. And I have to say, I was also kind of excited when I saw the Star Wars trailer
I was too.
that came out the other
Yeah,
day.
I saw that.
I was sure it was going to be terrible. Like I was convinced it was going to be terrible,
Okay.
and then I was like, "Oh, I'm excited."
Star Wars fan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my 40s, so I grew up in the 70s, and I remember the first movie that I went to see was a double feature of the first 2 Star Wars movies. So, yeah, I didn't love the last trilogy,
Mm, remake.
but yeah, I'm a big fan.
Oh, good. All right. So, um, what, I'm sorry, was writing, wow, I'm sorry. How do you overcome writer's
Okay,
block? Sorry, I got a little lost in my notes there.
that's okay. I don't actually really believe in writer's block.
Mm,
For me, I think I have idea blocks sometimes. Like I think it's possible that sometimes I just don't know. I don't have an idea for a book. I think you have to learn to work through what people would call writer's block. So early on, when I wrote poems, I was like, I literally would wait for inspiration to hit me, and I would write a poem.
mm,
But you can't do that with a book. You're never going to finish it.
mm,
So you have to learn to just write when you do not feel like writing, like
mm,
at all. And I found actually that sometimes some of the best stuff comes out then.
mm.
So that's how I deal with writer's block, because I just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
And I forge ahead.
yeah, that's a good piece of advice too, definitely. So a question here from Nicole. Do you ever read books on e-readers or download things through Netflix?
I
NetGalley, I'm
do
sorry.
read, I would say, yeah, I do read the majority of my books on e-readers. I have read one or two books on NetGalley, but because somebody has asked me to blurb a book.
Mm.
But I'm not a book blogger, and so for me, authors only get paid when people like buy their books. So not that NetGalley is illegal or anything, but I'm not a book blogger, so I think that's what NetGalley is
Mm.
for people who are really out there
Mm.
reviewing books. But yeah, I love my e-reader. I read at night, and it's great for me to be able to read in bed without the light on,
Mhm.
and to travel and have books with
Mhm.
me. And I probably read now at least 75% of my books that way.
Oh wow.
But I still have a huge library of paper books, and I'm kind of crazy. If I love a book, I'll then go buy the paper copy.
Oh. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so you said you like to write in front of the TV, in planes, but do you have a favorite place to write, like out of all the places you've ever written?
Um, just my couch, honestly. I mean, it's so silly. I have this beautiful office, and
Hmm.
but yeah, I probably write, you know, 85% of the time with my laptop on my lap,
Mhm.
on the couch. So I guess that's my favorite place to write.
Oh, nice. All right. So your book has been translated into several different languages. Do you speak any other languages, or have you ever played a part in the translation process for your books?
Yeah, so I speak French. So I'm from Montreal, it's a bilingual city, and I work in English and in French. So three of my books have been translated into French, and I did approve the translator, and then I approved the final translation. So that was a lot of work. Translating is a lot of work.
Mm.
And then for translations in other places, the translator is always allowed to contact me, and usually they write asking a couple of questions. There's always idioms and phrases in English that don't necessarily translate into another language. So that's as much, but I have no idea if the translations are good or bad.
Mm.
I just hope they're good. Because like literally, in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia, like my last name is McKenzie.
Mm.
Like they add Ova on. It's like, oh, I have a different name. Cool. So yeah. So I mean, it's really an extraordinary experience. I get fan mail sometimes from people that I have to put through Google Translate to
Oh
sort of
wow.
get the gist of it. Yeah,
Well,
well, that's fun.
that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Cool. So if you could go on a trip anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Hmm. I would love to go back to Australia. I went there once, and it's such a big country, and I really only saw a tiny part of it. And I'd love to be able to go there for a couple of months and just like see the whole thing, and go to New Zealand also, which I hear is totally beautiful.
Mm. Very cool.
So yeah,
Very cool. Never been there before,
maybe
but
someday.
yeah, someday you can go back. So
It's long, it's far.
yeah, it must be a really long plane ride. But you could get a lot of writing done
Mhm.
probably in the plane.
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't a writer when I went there, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So before the end of our chat, we like to do this little thing called rapid fire questions where I sort of ask you
Okay.
a few, and it's not as scary as it sounds, but I ask you a few questions where there's kind of an A or B answer, like it's one or the other, and you just answer the first
Okay.
thing that comes into your head. Okay, ready?
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you prefer reading fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Night owl.
Is your favorite season spring, summer, fall, or winter?
Summer.
Mystery or romance?
Mystery.
Watching movies or reading books?
Tough choice. Reading books.
Which do you prefer, Twitter or Facebook?
Ugh, can I get rid of both of them? Facebook.
All right. Thank you so much. So I think that's about all the time we
Thank
have for
you.
today. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for all the viewers today for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks for coming. All right, it was great talking with you, Catherine.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.